Hello, my name's Jack. Welcome to Cine Watch Read, and I'm here to talk about Halloween, as in John Carpenter's 1978 classic Halloween, as well as the series as a whole. And yes, this is my favorite horror film of all time. I don't care how cliche that sounds, because I'm sure it's most people's favorite horror film of all time, but I don't care. This is also one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. I remember when I first saw it, when I first heard about it, I was very young. I was, sort of in my mid-teens, and I was just discovering, just sort of trying to get into horror films. I was a bit of a wimp, I would admit that, but I was, just slowly getting into horror films. And I remember seeing Scream when it aired on TV, and I say if you are trying to get into horror films, I say watch Scream, because that is a good introduction, because it is a love letter to horror movies. And Halloween was one of the first films it references. We hear Drew Barrymore at the beginning, her character saying that's her favorite horror film as well. And of course, they make references to Halloween throughout the film. And then I looked into it a bit more, and I heard Jamie Lee Curtis is in it. Had seen her in a couple of films as well. I saw My Girl and Freaky Friday, and I might have seen True Lies at that point as well. And I think I saw Trading Places as well. Anyway, so yeah, I liked Jamie Lee Curtis a lot, so I was intrigued to see that. But of course, as I said, I was very young. Of course, I couldn't legally just go out and buy it. I was probably 15, 16. And of course, in my country, in the UK, it's rated 18. So of course, it would be illegal to sell that to me. But I remember when I was studying, I was a smart kid, and I worked really hard, but I had trouble concentrating a lot. I had trouble with procrastination. I don't know why I had those issues, but I found it very hard to focus at times. And so my brother in a way bribed me, and he said if I get a certain grade on GCSE, he would reward me in some way. And of course I got the mark that I needed, and he rewarded me with what I wanted to get from HMV. And of course I picked Halloween, and of course that was a reward well spent, because I remember I even made sure I managed to set the mood right when I first watched it. I made sure everyone else, all the adults in my house, went to bed, and I made sure it was total silence. I made sure the room was dark, so I could set the right mood and just put the film on. And I remember being just so engrossed in it, like with the opening title sequence with that pumpkin and John Carpenter's score. It was just slowly engrossing me into the atmosphere. And then you follow that POV shot through the Myers house, and then he grabs a knife, then he stabs his sister, then we follow him back out the house, and then of course you get the big reveal that it was just a little child in a clown costume. I remember that whole scene. I was on the edge of my seat, and it was the first 5 minutes, and oh my god, it was just so atmospheric, so spine-tingling. I just couldn't get over it. And then, of course, we cut ahead 15 years later, and then we're introduced to Donald Pleasance's character, and of course, we can see he's this kind of bitter, oldish man, and we see what being Michael's psychologist has done to him all these years. Because he's not your typical psychologist, in the sense that he's, when they try to find like the human part, like clearly he was so broken by what he saw in Michael that it's just made him so bitter, and you feel so bad for him, because he's the only one who can see Michael for who he is, and he's trying to convince people this is evil incarnate. And of course other people kind of just shrug him off, and then of course Michael escapes, and then of course we're introduced to Jamie Lee Curtis's character, who Laurie Strode. And of course I realized this is also her first film. Like the opening credits says introducing Jamie Lee Curtis, So this is a great first film for her, and I'd say it's amazing that she still loves this movie to this day, and that she's still continuing the character all the way through, of course, to the new films, and of course that's coming to an end, of course, in Halloween Ends, that's coming out later this year. And yeah, great first performance, great for a horror movie as well, being your first movie as well. And of course I really liked her character. Like, Laurie is a likable character, and of course that's what I like. That's why I like she's got a likable protagonist. She's not the smart. She may not be as smart as you think she is. I mean, she may be academic, but sometimes her survival instincts are hit and miss. We've seen her make a few mistakes in the climax, but she's only human at the end of the day. But at the same time, she does have some great. I do like her ingenuity. I like that she just like when she got attacked by Michael at the end, and she's just smashing that window with her hand. I don't know. I don't think I could do that. Just smash that. She didn't give a second thought to just smash that window to unlock it from the outside, and then she goes into the house, where she was doing the babysitting. She grabs that knitting needle and just instantly stabs him into the neck. Like, that's awesome. And then of course she has that idea of hiding the children in the bathroom, and then sort of pretend like she escaped, and then like make it look like she jumped out the window, but actually she's just hiding in the wardrobe. And even when that doesn't work, she's just she's making up a weapon out of this coat hanger, and that is just that's so clever. She has like some good survival instincts. And that's why I like. And then and at the same time she made mistakes as well. She kept dropping that knife, like that was silly as well. But again, she's in a night of terror. She demonstrated some good survival instincts, but then she made mistakes as well. She's a human being at the end of the day. And then of course Dr. Loomis comes in, shoots him 6 times, and then Michael's body disappears. And then Loomis had the best reaction to that as well. He just looks down, and he doesn't look the least bit surprised. And apparently that was Donald Pleasance's idea, to give him the reaction of, yes, I knew that would happen, which says a lot about Loomis's character as a whole, really. And like Michael, like he's just this evil incarnate, like this unstoppable force, like this predator that you just can't reason with at all. So yes, as I said, I love this film. I love the atmosphere, the characters. There's everything. There's almost nothing I don't like about this. I mean, of course there are, because it's a 1978 film and a small film in 1978. Of course there are some little nitpicks I could say, like that it was clearly not shot in autumn. It was clearly shot maybe during spring or summer. That's why you only see a handful of like fake autumn leaves about. And then of course some effects are of course dated, but that's again a small film in 1978. They make up with that with creativity in a way. But sometimes less the budget the better, because it forces you to be creative. And in a lot of ways that's where a lot of the sequels in a way suffer, because they just don't age that well. Even though they obviously have bigger budgets than Carpenter's original, they still don't age as well as the 78 version. And it's like you feel like their products, even though 78 had the smallest budget out of them all, it feels timeless, and most of the sequels don't. I'm not sort of counting the David Gordon Green ones yet, because they're still relatively new, so I don't know if they're going to age yet or not, but only time will tell on that one. But so moving on to this, my experience with the sequels. Because I didn't really think much about seeing the sequels after seeing the original, because I loved it so much. And sometimes you wonder, is a sequel going to tarnish it? Because horror sequels didn't really have good reputations. But I did finally get around to watching them. Halloween 2, I have to say I found that pretty underwhelming. I did love that it was set on the same night as the first film. I love that it just continues on from where it left off. But you can tell the style changed like instantly. You know, you can tell John Carpenter did not direct it. I know he wrote it, but you can tell, you know, this is not his film. And like with the whole, was it the Sandman opening? Like that just didn't feel in tone to me. And then even the opening credits with that new version of the theme song just didn't sound right to me. And you know, and then you have that out of nowhere like twist of Laurie being Michael's younger sister, which doesn't really make much sense when you think about it. You know, like there's no mention of him having a sister in the first film. We never see baby Laurie in the opening scene, so where was she there? And like if he came back to find Laurie, why was he stalking her friends? Like that doesn't make any sense. You know, I thought the whole idea of Halloween, first from Halloween with Laurie, and that she was just there. That was the thing. She was just an unlucky target. And again, he stalks her friends as well. He stalks Annie. You know, he spends almost as much time as, you know, going after Annie as he does Laurie. So why bother? So, you know, could Annie also? I think someone else pointed out, I think it was Cybercat, that he puts Annie's body underneath Judith's headstone. So it's like, well, did he think Annie was his sister? I don't know. Again, doesn't make much sense. I just like the idea that Laurie and her friends, they were just some random girls that he just happened to see and stalk. And that maybe they reminded him of his sister because his sister was supposedly babysitting him that night that he killed her, and that so seeing these girls doing the same thing just reminded him of his sister. That's pretty much all you needed, really. That was just, to me, it was just a lazy plot twist to just so that Michael could have a reason to go back to Laurie at the hospital. And even John Carpenter, you know, he admitted he drunk himself heavily while writing that script. You know, he admitted also that the script was basically a cash grab because he was trying to claim back the royalties from Halloween 1978. Because like I said, it was a very small film at that time, and you know, so I don't know how it works business-wise, but clearly he made it on a small budget. He sold it to the Cards. I guess the Cards didn't give him a share of the profits. I guess they didn't have to at that time. So I guess he did the sequel as part of a deal to claim those royalties. That's what I'm hearing. Like, don't quote me. Maybe someone with more knowledge on this can explain this better than I can. But yeah. So either way, I was just underwhelmed by it all, and I did like the final showdown with you know, Loomis sacrificing himself to, you know, get rid of Michael. You know, he releases the gas and lights it on fire, and then get that explosion. And we see Michael's body kind of again going after Laurie, then just collapsing. That was a good visual. Halloween 3, that was pretty much the last, up until the David Gordon Green trilogy, that was the last Halloween film I actually watched. And I wasn't really that interested. I knew it pretty much had nothing to do with the originals. I would say watching it was an interesting film as a standalone. And, you know, I did like the premise. I mean, did it even have an ending though? That's the thing. I feel like it needed an extra scene or two at the end. Like, it's a film that just leaves you hanging. Like, what's the resolution? Is there meant to be a resolution at the end? I don't know. It's a strange film. Good as a standalone, but not part of the series. I did enjoy Halloween 4. I mean, I think it was slightly better than Halloween 2. You know, I hated that they basically killed off Laurie Strode off screen. I hate it when sequels do that, where they kill off a main character, but they give them the off-screen death because they couldn't get the actor to come back. I know Jamie Lee Curtis was sort of retiring from horror films that time, and so there was no chance of getting her into this. But yeah, to say that she died in a car accident or something, like, yeah, that's basically a cliche in of itself. But at the same time, I did enjoy Rachel and Jamie, who is, of course, Jamie was Laurie's daughter, and of course, they obviously named the character after Jamie Lee Curtis. But yes, I like them. I like the sister bond they have, like her, because Rachel's her adoptive sister, and of course she's about the same age as Laurie was in the first two films, and yeah. So now, of course, Jamie is the new target because that's the next lineage in the line. But something that made no sense to me is because they established that Michael survived the explosion, that it put him in a coma for 10 years, and of course he's only been awakened now because he's overheard that he has a niece. But at the same time, Loomis survived that explosion, and he only comes out with like a scar on his face and a limp. Really? Like this, the indestructible Michael Myers got put into a coma for 10 years because of this explosion, and this normal guy that Loomis is works out with probably the most minor of injuries. I mean, okay, that's not a minor injury, but compared to Michael, it is. Like, are we sure, like, Loomis is not the supernatural one here? And, of course, I think everyone agrees the Myers mask he wears in this looks stupid. Like, it is so lazy. And I did love the ending, though, and I'm gonna talk about this one, reference the ending to Halloween 4 in a bit, when I discuss my theory on Halloween Ends. And now we're gonna then go to Halloween 5, which was atrocious. I hate it. Skip that. Halloween 6, again, atrocious. I love Paul Rudd as an actor. He was miscast as Tommy Doyle. Gotta say that. But again, terrible. I've only ever seen the theatrical cut. The producer's cut is not available in my country. But either way, the whole premise of it just does not intrigue me at all. Like the whole idea of Michael being controlled by a cult, like it's just stupid. It's just stupid. I don't like the idea of that at all. And yeah, and it's just a stupid idea. I'm sure it works for some Halloween fans, but not for me. Yeah, then we got Halloween H2O, and in its defense, it is probably the best of that bunch. You know, of course, but it's at the same time it's from the 90s and it's post Scream, so it utilizes some of the score from the Scream. It makes a few references to Scream as well, so it's definitely trying to appeal to that market. But you know, Jamie Lee Curtis though does come back. She is great, and but yeah, it just doesn't feel in tone. I think I liked it when I first saw it, mainly because I did like what they did with Laurie in it, and I guess that's again purely to the merit of Jamie Lee Curtis. Enjoyed parts of it, and I feel like again this is probably the best sequel of the bunch that moment. So in a way, I felt like I was more settling than anything else. Then I feel like I was like, oh, I felt like I finally got a true sequel. No, I just felt like I was settling for some, because I had to put through two really, really bad sequels before this. This was, in a way, felt like a treat. It's like when someone gives you two rotten apples and then you're settling, so you settle for just a bruised apple. You know, it's just like that. Like, I didn't care for it. Like I said, some of the stuff with Laurie was good, and the ending was great, but again, I didn't feel fully satisfied watching it. I did love watching Laurie cut his head off. I didn't feel in it. I didn't like the setting. Like, I think Haddonfield was practically a character in and of itself as well. So to set it in California at this boarding school just didn't intrigue me at all. And so, yeah, so as I said, and I enjoyed Halloween H2 when I first saw it, but I'm not as big as a fan of it as other fans are. And then, of course, Halloween Resurrection, again, atrocious. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, again, she was still great in the very little that she did at the beginning. But, that, of course, that whole twist that she killed the wrong person, yeah, that's pretty insulting, I would say. And then, of course, we get the whole Big Brother reality show thing with these annoying characters. I mean, I will say, I'll give props to the production designer, because they actually did at least make an effort to make the Myers house in this film look like the one from the first film, because the one that we see in both Halloween 5 and Halloween 6 look nothing like the original, like especially the one they used in Halloween 5. Like, what were they thinking? Like, it looks literally nothing like the Myers house. Like, I don't know what they were thinking there, and from what I remember, the one in Halloween 6, which was different to the one in Halloween 5, I guess looked a little bit similar to the one from first Halloween, but it's still clearly not the same house. And said this one in Halloween Resurrection, they at least tried to make it look like that. So that's the only compliment I'll give that. And then up to that, of course, the reception to Halloween Resurrection was so bad that, of course, they pretty much scrapped everything else after that. And that's when they moved on to the remake route, because at that time, horror remakes at that time were just through the roof at that point. I think it started with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. That became such a surprise hit. So that's when we got Rob Zombie directing his remake. And yes, I own this and his sequel, Halloween 2. Yes, I guess you could say these are guilty pleasures. Yeah, they're not great films, I will say. And in terms, although it did introduce me to Rob Zombie, and I actually do quite like his films. I do like his Firefly trilogy. I don't know why I like Rob Zombie films so much. Maybe I'll go into that in a much later review. But I guess in a way, to me, it was just refreshing. Like, after watching so many bland sequels, I guess it was refreshing to see something almost the opposite of that. Like Rob Zombie loves to do something so carnage, like so over the top. And I think John Carpenter's thing said to Rob Zombie, make it your own, and he did make it his own. He made it, like, pumped everything up to 11, and gave us loads and loads of swear words, loads and loads of violence, loads of gore. And I will say one thing he definitely does better than pretty much every. I say one thing Rob Zombie does do better than John Carpenter, not so much in the original Halloween, but with the rest of the series, is that he does handle the sister twist a lot better, because he incorporates that into his remake of the first film. So he's able to make that connection to Laurie and Michael a bit more personal, make it flow much better than make it like an out of nowhere twist. We actually get to see Laurie as a baby at the beginning. This kind of makes the fatal mistake of that Halloween 6 also made, where it comes to explain why Michael is, but it kind of does the opposite of how it is. Like, Halloween 6 makes it blatantly supernatural, whereas Rob Zombie makes it blatantly realistic. He's just saying it's years and years of abuse and him abusing animals, and that kind of thing that led him to being a psychopath, which is not a bad idea. If for a standalone film, if you watch it separately to Halloween, it is an interesting idea. Yeah, but as a Halloween remake, it doesn't work necessarily. But I think if Rob Zombie had just made this film without the Halloween title and gave us characters new names, I think it would have been much better. And I feel like in a lot of ways, his sequel Halloween 2 is better, because he didn't feel bound by with the original, that it allowed him to go in a more different direction. And of course, in that one, he focused more on Laurie, followed Laurie's trauma and how it brought her psyche back, connected her psyche to Michael's psyche, and but at the same time, we also see what's in Michael's head, and then we can see what's in Laurie's head as well, and we see she's falling down the same path as Michael. And again, as a standalone, completely separate from the Halloween series, it is interesting. Like, I'm not saying they're good films, but they are at least more interesting than any of the other sequels before this had given us. So that's why in a way, I do like them as a guilty pleasure, just because they are something different and more interesting. Now moving on to the David Gordon Green films, Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills. And to me, Halloween 2018 is the first Halloween sequel to get it right, in my opinion. It got it absolutely right. It made the smart decision to completely disown what happened before it and pretend nothing else happened after 1978. And so we skip from 1978 to 2018, 40 years later. Michael and Laurie are not brother and sister at all. She is again just a random target. And we see what this trauma has done to Laurie for the past 40 years. You know, she's this reclusive, like kind of ready for action. And, you know, she's had a daughter that was taken away from her. She was preparing her daughter for the inevitable. And she's, it's just destroyed her life pretty much. And you know, we start off with these journalists. They're trying to exploit her for it as well. And it's an interesting look at what trauma does to you. And then of course you see like how it affects the generations as well, like how it's affected her daughter Karen, and then it's passed on to the granddaughter Allyson, who's now the same age as Laurie as she was in the first film. So yeah, we see these generations and how they're all dealing with it all. And yeah, it's a fascinating look. Like, as David Gordon Green, like he completely just ignored what Halloween 2 onwards had done, and he just went back to what John Carpenter did. Looked at how Michael had such an impact on Dr. Loomis. He carries that over to what the impact he had on Laurie, but also the town itself. And of course it's been 40 years, so of course the new generation doesn't have as much knowledge as the older generation have, so we get a nice mix of like old and new. And like there's even other characters as well, like we have this police officer Hawkins, who supposedly arrested Michael that night after he made his he did his disappearing act after Loomis shot him, and we see how much that has impacted him. Then we get this new doctor who was a student of Dr. Loomis, and we see how this fascination that Dr. Sartain has on Michael, and of course he has a very different reaction to how Loomis saw him. And again, it's it's like very fascinating. Like he just looks at how the impact of one evil person had on on these innocent people, and then in a way brings out the worst in them. Like we see Laurie, she's like I said, Laurie, she's this recluse. She's this, you know, she's turned her house into this like this dungeon, like this fortress dungeon with weapons and cages and traps. And we see what it has done to her life. We see this doctor who's become insane as well, in not so much as the way Loomis was insane, but it's like he's so fascinated by what drives the evil in him, that he now wants to experience it himself. And it was a weird plot twist, but I'm glad it didn't last that long, because we wanted Michael to be the bad guy. So I'm glad, at the very least, even though it's so random, I'm glad it only lasted about 5 minutes. But yeah, I remember when I saw this in cinema, I was just like, wow, someone finally got it. Someone understood what the original was about, and he carries it on through his film. And he made it on a smaller budget as well compared to the other sequels. And even though it obviously had a bigger budget than the original, there was a lot more like gore effects, but he didn't, even though a lot of the kill scenes are over the top, he doesn't shoot them over the top, if that makes sense. Like some of them more grotesque ones are actually done off screen, but you don't feel cheated either. You know, you see the aftermath of a lot of them, then he cuts away at the right moments, and he knows what to show and what not to show. Like they clearly storyboarded this film very cleverly. Like it's not like say the Black Christmas remake, where they obviously cut a lot of key shots to appeal to younger audiences. You know, this one, they were very creative and still earned the 18 certificate. I liked how they portrayed Laurie as well. Like, yeah, in H2O, you know, we see that she's tried to move on with life, you know, career-wise, but you know, she's still traumatized. But in this one, like, she's completely traumatized. We don't know. I don't know. We don't really see what she actually did with her life, work-wise. I'm guessing she doesn't have a job, and she's probably just living off an inheritance or some kind of insurance settlement or something that she probably received for her trauma. But she's living a recluse, and it's affected her relationship with her daughter. And she's trained her daughter up to be into self-defense, and of course the social services took her away from her. Then and she's still convinced Michael was after her, even though Laurie this time she goes after him. And then of course later Dr. Sartain brings Michael to her, and she's still convinced that Michael was stalking her this whole time. So we can see that it's really taken a toll on Laurie's sanity. And Jamie Lee Curtis's performance is just amazing. This is probably Jamie Lee Curtis's best performance of her career. If they give Academy Awards out to slasher films, like, she would most definitely get one. And yeah, I did love the ending as well. We see that what this Night of Terror has done to her daughter Karen and her granddaughter to Allyson. We see Karen, when she's finally realized that her mum was right all along, really, that Michael is this uncontrollable threat, and she finally puts her train to good use, when she leads Michael to the basement, and then of course acts all damsel in distress, and then just shoots him. And then we see Allyson, who's kind of going through something similar that Laurie went through, and then we see that scene with the mannequins, and I'm going to talk about that a bit later in this video as well. And then she then helps her mum and her grandmum just help Michael, just stabs him in the leg, and then they set the whole house on fire. And then of course that leads us to Halloween Kills, where we see how that trauma and impact has now spread across Haddonfield. When I was talking about H2O, I mentioned how Haddonfield felt just as much of a character as everyone else. And here we see Haddonfield, and we see like the residents of Haddonfield and how this has affected them. And we get to follow other characters, both from the original and even minor characters from Halloween 2018. And so we are introduced to old characters. We get Anthony Michael Hall taking over the role as Tommy Doyle, the child that Laurie babysat in the first film, and Kyle Richards comes back as Lindsay Wallace, the other child she was babysitting. And then we meet Lonnie, who was a very, very minor character in the first film, who bullied Tommy, and of course they're now friends, and he's the father of Allison's boyfriend. And we see other small characters from the first film, like the graveyard caretaker lady. She's in this film. This nurse and doctor, husband and wife, that we see very, very briefly in the first film, and they even get the same actors to play them again. Like, you only see them for a few seconds in the first film, and yet they're in this as well. And when I say first film, I mean Halloween 2018, not the original Halloween. But I love that. I like that you just feel that sense of community in this. Where the minor characters that we just see earlier now are being significant, and that just makes the Haddonfield just feel very intimate, very small. Then we just see what such an evil act that Michael does has impacted these people. And it, again, how I said that, how the trauma brings out the worst in you. Well, we see how that brings out the worst in people of Haddonfield, like especially Tommy Doyle. This young kid that we saw in the original, who was always paranoid about the boogeyman. See him grow up into this, again, kind of like almost like Laurie in a way, this kind of bitter middle-aged man. And we just see him like lead this mob, and then it turns out they're following the wrong person, because Michael is not the only patient who escaped. And then Laurie, who is, of course, she's in the hospital. She's recovering from the wounds because she had this big open wound in her abdomen, and she's being treated. Then of course Karen and Allyson, they find out that Michael is still alive. He escape that fire, and then of course we see this mob suddenly form in the hospital, and then that's when Laurie realizes Michael's back, and then she realizes they're following the wrong person, and they're trying to put a stop to that. You know, Karen does what she can to help this guy, and then it's too late. The guy kills himself, and it is so sad. It's so sad. It's so sad to watch. But that's what happens with a mob, really. When someone is accused, it doesn't matter if what the evidence points to. As long as someone's accused, that's almost good enough for a mob, and they just go after someone, whether they're innocent or not. And yeah, some people do kill themselves because of that, and it's a good representation of mob mentality, and again how such an evil act can bring out the worst in even possibly good people. And yeah, then it leads to this big climax after when Karen now finally leads the mob, and she is of course a lot more. Of course, she knows what she's doing this time, and then of course they go to the Myers house, which is now of course owned by this couple, and and of course Michael's back. He kills this couple, then of course reliving almost his childhood in a way, and then of course they go up to him Allyson, like her boyfriend Cameron, and then his dad Lonnie. They go after him. They're both killed. Allyson is severely wounded, and of course almost in a way kind of losing her head a bit as well. Then Karen shows up with the mob, but they're a lot more strategic. Like under Karen's direction, they're a lot more strategic. She attacks Michael, she grabs his mask, she gets him to follow her, then they all just attack him. And even then, that still does not kill Michael. And of course, then everyone dies, like presumably Tommy as well. And then Karen goes into the bedroom because she thinks Michael's dead, and she's trying to put herself in Michael's shoes, or Michael's eyes, like what he saw outside that window. And then Michael just shows up and just stabs her to death. Oh my god. And then you get this powerful monologue from Laurie, who is talking about how he gets his power from all this, like how the more we hit, the stronger he gets. And it's clear whatever they have to do, it's going to have to be a lot more strategic than what they've been doing in this film. And what I like about this as well is at first I thought this was a big flaw, but actually it ended up working for the best, was how very little Laurie does in this, and yet she's still there. She's still got screen time. She's not just, even though she's not doing anything, because she's mortally wounded almost, but it made her reflect a lot. That's where because Hawkins, who survived his encounter with Dr. Sartain, he reveals to Laurie, you were never Michael's target. You were in a way Dr. Sartain's target. He was fascinated with you. He brought Michael to you. Michael did not go to you. And that's when Laurie starts to realize, she wasted her life fighting something that was never really coming for her. She was just an unlucky person that night, and she's lived with it for the rest of her life. And it's very sad as well, but I think in a way it's the kick in the bum that she needed to really move on with her life. And but of course she can't now move on fully because her daughter just died. And of course that's going to lead us to Halloween Ends. And this is where I'm going to get into my prediction of Halloween Ends. I actually wrote a prediction review on my blog. I actually wrote this and published it on Halloween night, at least Halloween night in my country, on October 31st. There'll be a link in the description. The reason I'm doing this now is because we had the teaser trailer this week. We've had other stuff since then as well, but I'm going to go through it and see if some of those predictions are right. I still don't know if all of it's going to be right, because there's only so much you can tell from a teaser trailer. At least the teaser and the synopsis they released gives us an idea of where they're going with this now. So I'm just gonna see what I've written here. Something I wrote in there already, because this is something they already announced pretty early on with them, is that they made some changes to the original idea of Halloween Ends. They were originally going to shoot it back to back with Halloween Kills, but they wanted to see what the reception to Halloween Kills was going to be like. And then of course COVID hit as well, so that caused a production delay, because they shot Halloween Kills 2 years before they released it, and then they put that back a year, then they put back production of Halloween Ends a year as well. And that forced them to make some changes. They decided to, because they were going to again continue from the night of Halloween Kills, which something I did forget to mention, of course, that Halloween Kills takes place on the same night as Halloween 2018, similar to how the original Halloween 2 took place the same night as 1978. But this one they decided they're going to jump ahead 4 years, which to me is a good idea, because I honestly don't know how another film's gonna work like that. I mean, I get style wise and continuity wise that would make a nice whole package that this whole trilogy takes place in one night, but where would they go? Almost everyone is either dead or severely wounded by the end of Halloween Kills, so the only person really left standing is Michael. So how can you do a full movie with all these injured characters? That's not, I don't see I don't know what the plan was there, but I'm glad they chose to let some time pass, so Laurie can fully recover from her injuries, so Hawkins and Allyson and Lindsay, they can all heal from their injuries and be more evenly prepared to fight Michael again. And they also said that COVID is going to play a role in this as well. I'm hoping that I hope COVID's not going to play that big role. I hope it's just or maybe it's just more of a visual cue. Some people say how Halloween 2018 is almost like a reflection on the Me Too movement, and how Halloween Kills is almost like a reflection on the Black Lives Matter movement. Even though those films were shot before then, the visual of it is still almost reminiscent of it. And I'm hoping, in a way, that's what COVID is in Halloween Ends. It's not so much going to be, we've all been in lockdown because of this disease. I think it's just more like, maybe use what the impact of what Michael done as give us the same cues, like how how Haddonfield is now a ghost town. And maybe everyone's just now sort of coming to terms with it, and then they're just coming out of what's essentially been a ghost town for 4 years. I'm hoping that's how it is. I hope it's just more of a visual thing than we've all been in lockdown, we've all down because of COVID, that kind of thing. I thought you don't need COVID in this. You don't literally need COVID in this, because I think we all want to move on from COVID. But we've all lived it. We've all followed the news. We've all suffered from the disease in some way. We don't need to keep being reminded, or we don't need it shoved in our heads. But visual cues, like I said, ghost town or something, that kind of thing, like people afraid to leave their homes because they're afraid Michael will kill them. Maybe that be how COVID is, like people are afraid to leave their homes because they're afraid the disease will get them. Maybe that's just how they're going to put COVID into this. At least that's my opinion. But also, again, just going through this article, what I wrote. So yeah, I wrote that I hope that they start off with with the night where Halloween Kills left off. In a way, like kind of how Avengers Endgame started off from that cliffhanger ending of Infinity War, and before they cut ahead 5 years later. And that would be nice. I want to see Laurie's reaction to Karen's death. I mean, we sort of got that in the extended version of Halloween Kills, but Of course, whether that extended cut's going to be canon or not, I don't know. Personally, I would rather see a more. Personally, I would love to see a more grief-stricken Laurie than one that we got in the alternate ending, and Allyson as well. I want to see. I want to see Karen's death have such a huge impact on them. And then I think, what else we got here? What else have I wrote? I should have. Sorry, I should have read this more in depth before I started this. Also, when I wrote this, I maybe they'll bring back a dead character, or at least a character we think is dead is back. I mean, I sort of made that reference to Karen. I mean, I think it's been more or less confirmed. You know, Karen is definitely dead, and we've not seen Judy Greer once. Any of like the promotion they've been doing on Instagram now. So that doesn't mean necessarily she's not going to be in it. You know, maybe she'll have like a little cameo in a flashback or something. But it's more or less been confirmed. You know, she's not coming back in full. So yeah, Karen's dead. You know, I also sort of predict maybe Tommy is still alive, because even though we see the bat come down and a blood splatter, we don't see Tommy's body afterwards. So I predict he might be dead. But then again, there's been no such confirmation that Anthony Michael Hall is coming back. Another one, I put this in the article as well because someone did this. It might have been Wolfman's Got Nards who said this in his channel, that maybe Aaron, the journalist from Halloween 2018, may still be alive, because we don't technically see him die, or we see him get messed up, but then we see a lot of characters get messed up and still survive in this. So, and I think I do kind of like that idea, because he, of course, did so much research on Michael. You know, he has so many notes. He has a lot of Dr. Loomis's notes, and I feel like those. It's like if Laurie wants to really find out anything about Michael, like, you know, talking to Aaron, that would be a good way to do it. Now, this could bring that full circle where she rejected his interview because she didn't want to understand Michael. You know, she says, you know, Michael killed 5 people. We need to understand him. Well, I think Laurie needs to understand now, because that's the only way she knows how to defeat him. So I think maybe her reaching out to Aaron, that would bring a huge contrast to that introduction scene of her in 2018. So anyway, I would like to see that. Don't know if that will happen, but that'd be cool. So yeah, one of the things I'm certain that I was right on is that Laurie is going to move on with her life since the event of 2018. You know, now that she knows that Michael is not coming after her, and you know, she's had this big reality check from Hawkins, and now that her daughter is dead and now she's going to have to look after Allyson, you know, it's going to force her to move on. And we saw in like the behind the scenes pictures that Jamie Lee Curtis has shared, you know, we can see Laurie looking a lot more relaxed, shall we say. She looks a lot better. You know, her hair, you know, she's clearly groomed herself a bit more, and according to the plot synopsis, she's written a memoir, and a lot of people tend to write a lot of things down. That's a form of healing. So she's publishing this memoir to help herself move on and maybe help other people, kind of like how Sidney Prescott did that in Scream 4. And yes, and they don't say much about Allyson, and we don't even see much of Allyson in the trailer either. But I will have my theory. I do have a new sort of theory on Allyson. I don't think anyone else has actually mentioned yet. I've seen a lot of prediction videos, and I've seen a few trailer reactions from very popular YouTubers on this who are also anticipating this. And I don't think, as of right now, I haven't watched every reaction on this, so I may be wrong, but as of right now, this theory has not been brought up yet. So I'm going to discuss this in a bit. Something else I was right on in what I've written here is that Kyle Richards is coming back as Lindsay. I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone anyway, you know, because Lindsay survived, and Kyle Richards did test well with the fans. You know, I loved her in Halloween Kills. I think Lindsay was one of the few competent characters in Halloween Kills. You know, we see her fill this trick-or-treat bag up with bricks and just whack Michael with it. I mean, it didn't have much impact, but she at least she was planning at least, and then when she was wounded, she made the smart decision of hiding. I mean, even hiding in the water. Well, not in the water, but just by the water. And from what and if you watch some of the behind the scenes stuff, you can see it was not an easy shoot for Kyle Richards either. And really good on Kyle Richards, for stepping back into the acting game in such a big way. Because Kyle, of course, if you know the name Kyle Richards, I mean, you probably will know her more as this. She's from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I don't watch that, but yeah, but I know that's what she's mostly known for nowadays. And of course, I think a lot of people don't even realize she was a child actress, and she had an impressive CV as a child as well. She was in Watcher in the Woods. I love that film. And so even though she hasn't acted in such a long time, she's still very much a part of the entertainment industry. So I'm glad they at least took a chance on her coming back, because they didn't do that with the actor. I think his name is Brian Andrews, who played Tommy in the original. They chose to cast a well-known actor in Anthony Michael Hall, which made sense because Brian Andrews is not part of the entertainment industry at all, and they obviously needed an experienced actor because Tommy had such a big role in Halloween Kills, whereas Lindsay's role was a bit more smaller, so I think they could sort of like ease Kyle Richards back into the acting world. And from what I understand, she's getting a bigger part in Halloween Ends, which I'm glad about. So I'm looking forward to that. But as we all gathered from that trailer, that they are trying to bring it back to the original. Like, apparently they're going to go for a more similar tone, and we even see like the nostalgia factor in there with Laurie wearing the blue shirt, the same kind of shirt that she wore in the third act of the first Halloween film, which is great. And apparently they even point out that her hair is even more similar to how it was in the first film as well. I mean, I always thought her hair was kind of similar to that in the last two films as well, though it's a lot more messier. But here it's a lot more, like I said, it's a lot more groomed like she was in the first film as well. So again, great visual callback. And what we got from this plot synopsis as well, we've got this new character called Corey, and he's going to be accused of killing a child that he babysat. And that, at first I thought, I'm not sure if I agree with that or not, that this is the direction taken, that I'm going to focus on like maybe a new killer, because as something else that, again, all these other reviewers have, all these other YouTubers, who are much better than this, like Dave McRae, Wolfman's Got Nards, Drum Dums, they all point out, that the Michael we seem to be following in this is not Michael, because you can see he has 4 fingers, whereas we saw in Halloween 2018, Laurie shot off 2 of them, and we even see that at some point in the trailer as well. We can see Laurie stabbing his hand, and we can see the 2 fingers, whereas at the beginning we see he has 4 fingers on that same hand, so which suggests that that's a different person. So we're looking at 2 possible Michaels in this, or maybe not 2 possible, but 2 possible killers, and that is presumably Corey. And at first I thought, I don't like this, why are we doing this with a new character? But then now that I've sat on this a few days, now I've got a new theory on how this is going on, because again, there's only so much you can tell from Wikipedia as well, because I know Wikipedia is not a credible source, but they established here that this character of Corey is going to be Allyson's boyfriend, or her new boyfriend, because Cameron was her boyfriend and he's dead now. But that has got me thinking, because then they're sort of being vague on where they're going with Allyson's character. And we do see Corey in the trailer as well. We see him in this, looks like a sewer, and that sort of harkens back to this to the working title of this film, which was Cave Dwellers, and we see him get attacked by Michael, and so we know that at the very least he's not the main killer, at least but unless we're seeing this through his head and he's seeing Michael, but that would be silly. I mean, that would be going into Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 territory if they do that. Like, are they really want to step? Do they really want to step on those shoes? Because that didn't do well with the die-hard Halloween fans. I mean, I liked it, but I did like that film, as I said, but I like it as a separate thing. I don't like it as part of the series. But anyway, that got me thinking, because like I said, they're being very vague on like what with Allyson in this. Like, we don't see her, they don't establish what she's done with her life yet, and we only see her in 2 shots in the trailer. And I said, and something that this Wikipedia article says, and I don't know if that's been verified or not, because I know what Wikipedia is like, but they established that Corey is Allyson's boyfriend in this, or her new boyfriend after Cameron, and that has got me thinking, what if Corey is a red herring? And what if Allyson is the new killer? I know that sounds insane, but bear with me on this. Because they're trying, when you look at David Gordon Green's films, he's trying to establish what it's like, what evil does to normal people, how it brings out the worst, as we saw in the original Halloween, what impact Michael had on Dr. Loomis. We see what in Halloween 2018, what this had on Laurie, and what it had on Dr. Sartain and Hawkins and the rest of the town, and how it brought out the worst in them. So what if Allyson suffered the most from this? And we see Allyson at breaking points in the past 2 films. Like in the first film, we see her with the mannequins, and we even get that brief little flash of Michael's mask in those mannequins. And then this one, it's almost like she's broken her leg. She's like begging Michael, like, just do it, like, kill me or something, just end this, like. And we see that, and now she's lost her dad by this point. She's about to lose Karen, and that got me thinking, like, what if Allyson has suffered the most out of all this? Like, clearly what she's been through is even worse than what Laurie went through in the first film. And I like the idea of because something that I feel like I think most people say was a missed opportunity, and this brings me back to something I said about Halloween 4's ending, is that how they figured the biggest missed opportunity is when they had Jamie Lloyd stab her mum, reminiscent of young Michael, and how they went nowhere really with it, or at least they went in a different direction with it in Halloween 5. Well, what if this is now the Jamie Lloyd story told through Allyson, and how this is now how we this is now, in a way, just make Allyson the Jamie Lloyd of this series, have Allyson sort of follow the same pathway as Michael. I'm not saying necessarily she could be a killer in this. I don't know if they will go in that direction or not, but maybe she will, in a way, at least follow the same steps. And maybe Corey is just a red herring. Maybe she's either setting Corey up or he's covering for her. But I think this could be an interesting direction. Because they're kind of setting up Allyson to be a final goal, but it would be an interesting twist if she goes in the opposite direction and have her be the new killer. And I think Michael will still be the main killer. I think, he'll still be the big threat, but I think Allyson has going through so much trauma that it's brought her in that similar direction. And again, I think that's a great way of exploring the whole how the evil has the impact on the innocent. It's because, like I said, like, evil seems to have a big theme throughout these films, and the way David Gordon Green is trying to explore that, and having a character we like go through this really dark path, whether Allison's actually a killer or not, or whether she's going down that path, is an interesting direction to explore. And that could be like a huge make or break for Laurie when she discovers what her granddaughter is like now. And what do you think? If anyone's watching this, what do you think of the idea of Allyson being like the next killer in this? And some people even had that theory as well, that in the final shot of Halloween 2018, we see Allyson still holding that knife. When she stabbed Michael, she's still holding that knife. That became the final shot, and people wondering what did that mean. Did why is she still holding on to that knife? And maybe Allyson has finally cracked. And is she gonna? What is her future? Is she gonna snap out of it? Has the knife been passed from Michael to Allyson? That's a good route to explore, and again, that's maybe a way of making up for what they pretty much the only interesting thing about the Jamie Lloyd trilogy was that she seemed to follow the same route as Michael, and then that got dropped. Maybe we'll get to see where that leads to. And again, could she finally put an not only put an end to Michael, but put an end to her own granddaughter? I mean, that would be really tragic. And I know Jamie Lee Curtis said this film is gonna piss us off, and yeah, I think if you're gonna make Allyson a killer in this, that will piss a lot of fans off, but it is a risky move, and if they can pull it off right, that would be a great direction. And I think someone even said as well that, I think it was John Carpenter, someone compared it to Christine. I've not seen Christine, but from what I heard, it's about this teenage boy who's obsessed with the car. Like someone just gets ridiculously obsessed with this killer car or something. And I've not seen it, so I've not seen it myself. But that's, again, I think it was it Dave McRae who said that in his review, not his review, but his trailer reaction. And when by horse he was applying that to Corey's character. And actually, why is this character called Corey? It sounds too much like Laurie. Maybe that's deliberate that their names rhyme, but Corey and Laurie. But yeah, what if what we're thinking that Corey's character is actually Allyson? That would be a really, really risky direction, and I would applaud David Gordon Green if he goes down that route. But anyway, I am so looking forward to it. Like I said, Halloween is my favorite horror film of all time. One of my favorite films of all time. David Gordon Green's new films are the only true sequels to understand what John Carpenter was doing with it. And as I said, I'm pumped for Halloween Ends. I'm hoping, this is probably my only video I'm going to do on this. Up until then, I'm probably not going to watch any trailer, because I feel like Halloween Kills was way over advertised, way over hyped, and that sort of killed the mood a little bit. It didn't impact my overall enjoyment of Halloween Kills, but I do think it was a little too much. So this one, I'm sort of like trying to hopefully go into this as blind as possible. And I might resist temptation, but because I love that so much. But I'm glad that the trailer itself didn't reveal too much. It just gave us a taste out of what we're getting. And yes, by Halloween Ends, by the time I see Halloween Ends, I might do this new video reviewing this and reacting to this video, how if I'm right or wrong on this. Hopefully I'll see you all on Halloween, if this video actually gets any views at all. Alright, I'll see you next time. Bye.